All right, hello everyone. This is our session on building a chatbot, and here is agenda. We're gonna discuss what a chatbot is and an overview of key chatbot terminology. We're gonna apply the chatbot key terminology to build Mr. BMI chatbot application. Yeah, that's another example that you're getting. We're gonna talk about some of the tips and tricks, best practices, and some of the assignment for requirements. And of course, always there is time for questions and answers. But before we do that, there are some important reminders. Well, first of all, let's start with the good news. You don't need to worry about the capacity hours for this assignment. Good news, you don't need to think about capacity hours. There is no such a thing for assignment 4. All right? So now, maybe it's a good news, maybe it's a bad news, but your chatbot must be ready 2 to 3 days before the assignment is due, because part of the assignment is experiment. You need to set aside 2 to 3 days to collect the data. And I'll discuss it more in details, but make sure the chatbot implementation for the most part is done 2 to 3 days before the assignment is due, right? And please keep your IBM Cloud account active. Do not deactivate it. Do not enter credit card. Do not ask IBM support for assistance. They don't know your assignment. Please. Okay, so then there is a quiz that you need to take on chatbot concepts. Well, the reason is we want to make sure that we speak the same language, right? If I told you to create an intent, you want to understand what I'm telling you to do, right? If you don't know what an intent is, you're not going to be able to follow me. So the quiz will help you learn the vocabulary for the chatbot, and you have unlimited number of attempts. Remember that the walkthrough that you're given, it's an example. It's not something that you're going to submit for grade, but an example, you have to do it, and it's a sequential. What does that mean is that you cannot jump to page 5 if you're not done with page 4. Because, for example, on a page 4, you could be asked to create a node or something. And on page 5, you're going to use that node for something else, right? So please do not skip any of the exercises. Please do this in a sequentially, right? But then what you develop for actual grade must be on your idea. It must be your original work, and it has to be on a topic of your interest. That means you cannot submit Mr. Code and you cannot submit Mr. BMI that you're going to get today. It has to be your chart, but let's give some examples. For example, some people did an example of an application that orders pizza, right? Pizza order. What type of crust do you like? What type of size? What toppings, etc. It could be ice cream order. It could be airline tickets purchase, right? It could be something like a conference room reservation, or it could be the help desk chatbot, right? Or a car self-service, something like that. So come up with the topic of your interest, right? And the only mistake you can make here is not asking for help. So keep this quote in mind, okay? Now, remember this. Once you delete something, it's gone. So you may want to be taking backups of JSON file. And I'll show you what that file is, right? So here, those are important reminders. I know some of it. Okay, this is vocabulary that you must know. And I believe this list is somewhere in the classroom as well. If not, you have it now. You need to know what intent is. We need to know what entity is, right? So intent is something that you want to do, right? An entity qualifies the intent. Like, for example, I want to turn something on. That's an intent, right? Entity would be something like the radio, light, air conditioning. You know, what can you turn on? This is going to be the entity, right? It qualifies the intent, right? So now entities have values. You need to understand the difference between entities that you create and the system entities, right? Such as date and time. Make sure that you understand what the dialog structure, such as node entry conditions, what a slot is, right? How do you get input from user, etc., right? Just please go through this vocabulary. Make sure you understand it, right? All right, so what is a bot? It's just systems that are used to solve specific problem, right? You define certain rules and it solves a problem based on rules. However, the chatbot, on the other hand, it understands the natural language. You type, you interact with this, you enter a language, right? You say, for example, tell me what are the store hours, right? And it gives you store hours, things like that. You're interacting with the person, but unlike ChatGPT, the chatbot is trained to solve the specific problem. For example, it could be tickets in purchase, it could be reservations, dinner reservation, or it could be something like, in this case, it's going to be BMI, right? In your other case, it's a Mr. Cold application. It's trained specifically based on the symptoms. It's going to tell you how seriously you're ill, right? So it's trained on specific topic, but you're interacting with it, right? And if something new, it needs to be trained. And if I introduce something that it has not seen before, you need to train. Right? Now, this is a high level what you're going to do. You're going to define the purpose of the assignment. Like, what is this? What problem are you trying to achieve? You're going to define the conversation scenarios and build a flow diagram. All of you have access to Visio because your student email account comes with application, and Visio is one of them. So everybody has access to do the diagram. Then you're going to do this. You're going to use Watson Assistant, or it's called now Watson X, to build a chatbot. So this service, it provides a dialogue management, natural language capabilities, right? And then what you're gonna do is that you're gonna train the application based on the scenarios that you define. Well, you're not gonna actually deploy, but you're gonna create an assistant, and that's considered deployment for the purpose of the assignment. You're gonna generate the link, you're gonna send that link to testers, you're gonna monitor the conversation log, you're gonna discuss the limitations, right? And you're gonna suggest the future enhancements. Like what can you do in the future to make this chatbot better, right? For example, the chatbot testing has to be ongoing. Maybe perhaps you want to use some Python code to test the chatbot, etc. It's a conceptual, right? Right? How you gonna continue testing the chatbot? How do you continue to improve? Yes, improving the relevancy of responses and more. So here today we're gonna look at the example. The application is called Mr. BMI, and we use it. You can use that application to estimate your BMI. So you ask to enter the height and weight in inches, and based on that, it's gonna give you your BMI. You can use also this application to interpret your blood pressure reading. Like for example, suppose that my blood pressure is 130 over 90, right? I might not understand, I might not know as an end user if it's too high or low. So you enter both readings and it's going to tell you if your blood pressure is normal or not. You can ask for more information to learn more about blood pressure. You can ask for the information to be sent to your email. The application is available 24/7 and it costs you nothing, it's free. And also the answers are consistent. So for example, if it told me that 115 over 75, if it told me that it's normal, it's gonna give you the same answer that is normal, right? But of course, if I wanted the application to be answer things about COVID or something like that, or the CPR, I would have to train it on that topic, right? So now let's look at this. Suppose that let's just imagine I have three doctors: Dr. Monitor, Dr. Stethoscope, and Dr. BMI. So that's how it's set up. So I have three doctors, and each doctor has a schedule. So if I load the application between 12 a.m. and 10 a.m., I'm gonna see this picture here, Mr. Monitor. If I load my application between 10 and 5, I'm gonna see this Miss Stethoscope. And if I load it between 5 p.m. and 12 a.m., I'm gonna see this picture. So the welcome message is gonna be different based on the time of the day. I want to show different picture based on the time of the day. It's a doctor on duty. That's what I call it. And I'll show you, but Just trying to start with the slides first. So actually, instead of showing you, what's going on? Instead of showing you like this, oh, not sure what I did, but instead of showing you like this, let's go to the actual application. And what I did was I created the link, right? So if I minimize that, so here I have this Watson assistant, right? And I click on launch Watson assistant, right? And oops, yes, I'll just click on launch Watson X assistant. Not sure why it logged me out. Oof, I hate when it does it. It's asking me to enter my password because right before the session, right before this, I logged in. Anyway, so let's go ahead and enter. Don't like when it's doing it, but well. Okay, so it's loading IBM Cloud now. But I was in assistant. So see that this is my application, and those are the skills, right? But before that, I created an assistant, and I will show you how to create. But the point I'm trying to make now is that let's do the preview. Oh, it's here. The preview is still here. It's saved. So this is the preview link. Let me refresh. Take a look at what's going to happen right now. So let's assume I deployed my chatbot, right? I click here. See this? Why do I see this picture? Because right now it's after 5 p.m., right? So I see this picture. This is the doctor that greets me. And they ask me, how may I help you? Now I have options. I can select one of the options or I can enter the text, right? Like what are the options? Let's click a look. I can ask it to estimate my BMI. I can ask what's BMI, what's blood pressure, right? I can ask to send me the information and I can exit. So those are the options, right? So what is this? If I select estimate BMI, this is equivalent to type in estimate BMI. But I just select this option. Let's see what's going to happen. It's asking me what's the height in inches. And I suppose that I put 60 inches. Now it's going to ask me about my weight. And let's say I put something garbage, right? I put the word table in there. Just garbage. Now, what it's trying to do is attempting to read the number from the keyboard. And I did not enter any number, so it's asking me again, how many pounds do I weigh, right? So I'm just gonna put something, right? Enter, and now it's gonna estimate the BMI, healthy weight, see? So it's gonna give me the number and then a comment based on what that number is. If it's overweight, if I'm underweight, etc. Right? So now let's start a different conversation. I'm gonna refresh, right? Still same picture because the time interval has not changed. See, still same picture. Now I can select an option and perhaps I'm gonna do something like, I want to know what is BMI and it's just gonna give me this. Unfortunately, the limitation here is it's a hard-coded text. A while ago, we were able to use the actual another application where you could build the repository of documents and it could search for the documents. They stopped that service, but before a few semesters ago, it was possible to connect to another service where you would build the repository of documents and it would search the documents for the topic. All right. So now you can select the next step here, right? And the next step, I want to know about my blood pressure. It's asking me to enter the systolic blood pressure reading, right? And I'm just gonna put 140 over 90. So that's gonna be elevated, right? Or high. It's gonna tell me your blood pressure is elevated. I have to adapt to the healthy lifestyle. What do I want to do next? Perhaps I want to receive this information by email. Right now, it's going to look for valid email address, valid email format. If I enter something like this, it's going to recognize that I'm entering garbage, right? So now I can enter something like this, x at x.com. This will pass because it's not checking if my email actually exists, but it's checking if it's following the format. It's using the expression, regular expression to check the format, right? Okay, it just said here, thank you, the information was sent, right? Next thing what I can do, let's say I want to exit. I'm going to select exit, but watch what's gonna happen. Aha, Tuesday, how does it know today is Tuesday? What am I doing? Am I doing something here? Somehow, I have to extract the day of the week from the day, right? So here, based on the day of the week, it's gonna show you the date. But if it's a weekend, the message is gonna be different, right? So it's just an implementation. And again, this was not done overnight. This was built over several semesters. It started as an example how to read number from the keyboard, all right? So you don't have to make something as complex, but it's just an example, and I'm going to dive into details. So here is just explanation of different scenarios, right? So, well, see this, what's the first scenario? You select, estimate the BMI, right? The application prompts you to enter, etc. You can enter 65 as text, and it's going to still recognize the number in the input. Then it calculates the BMI. But you should be able to exit at any point if I'm entering my numbers, and if I'm too shy to enter my weight, perhaps I can type exit and exit the conversation. I can do that, right? So just know that I should be able to exit the conversation at any point of the conversation. Remember that, right? So what you're gonna use something called handlers. Well, all right. Now, next, this is another scenario where user selects the blood pressure and it gives you information about the blood pressure. That's another scenario, right? Now, this is another scenario. You ask what is BMI or you ask what is the blood pressure, and it's going to give you the information on it, right? Next scenario is this, when you ask to email something, right? So you just select the email, but here I made it a little bit harder. I made it that you're given 3 attempts to enter the valid email. If your email is still invalid after 3 attempts, that's it. It's just gonna exit this logic. Like here, let me reload. I'll show you what I mean. Over here, I'm just gonna say email me the information. All right. So I go here, email me the information, and I'm gonna on purpose put invalid email once, twice, and third time. Now what's gonna do? It's gonna say that sorry, it tells me sorry, didn't receive the information. How may I help you? See, so it exited prompting for email. It does not keep going like a broken record. It just gave you 3 attempts. If you did not answer the question, that's it. See, it exited this conversation. In other words, each conversation should not be an infinite loop. There should be a way to exit. All right. Now, next thing is, so that's a scenario about email. Then we have a goodbye scenario. There are several situations when it tells you goodbye. First of all, if your blood pressure is super high, it's gonna the logic is gonna go to exit. You're gonna see this message over here. In addition to, thanks for using the application. So if the blood pressure is super high, you're gonna see 2 messages, right? But this is also assuming today is the weekday, right? You're gonna see the weekday. On a weekend, you're gonna see another message. It's gonna say, have a nice weekend. So, and you're not gonna see the picture. So the picture you see and the message you see depends on the day of the week. So somehow I had to make my application read the day of the week, right? Somehow I had to do that. And what is this? Guess what it is? Remember I mentioned the entity system entity? So dates, I use dates here and I use numbers here. Dates, timestamp, and number. That's what I've been using in here, in this application. This is just how the conversation flow diagram will look like. You're gonna use Visio and you have access to it because your email comes with a set of apps and Visio is one of them. And you may save your work on you have the space, you have a cloud space in there where you can save your work, you have a storage. So now we're gonna dive into the details. Skill, also known as a workspace, right? It's an environment where you put your dialogue, all your entities and intents. And at the end, you're gonna export the JSON file. So where do I have this? I have this in this service. Oops, it's here. When I go to the, I have to go to skills. Now it's called skill. See this? So this is a dialogue skill, and I called it Mr. Beer My Healthcare Dialogue in my case. So if I was going to submit this for grade, I would have to click here, and I would have to click on this download, and I would download the JSON file, and this is what you're going to submit, right? Then today, I'm going to give you a copy of the JSON file. So what you could do is this. You could go create skill, then you're going to do dialogue skill, right? But instead of selecting the new one, you're going to do this upload skill. Then you're going to upload the file that I'm going to give you, okay? And you're going to create the skill from that file, just because you need to look at the implementation detail. It's not something that you're going to submit for grade, but I'm going to give you this Mr. BMI example just for your learning. You can reuse certain aspects such as regular expression for email, how to read the day of the week. You can reuse that pieces, but application that you create has to be your application. You cannot just submit what I'm giving you verbatim, right? It has to be your topic. Anyway, so let's close this out. So this is a skill. What is skill? It's a workspace, in other words. You have all your intents and entities and the dialogue in that workspace, right? So if I click here, I'm gonna see my intent. What is the intent? What am I trying to do in here? Like goodbye, it's like a firewall intent. Intent could be to explain something. Intent could be to send an information. Could be to check, to calculate my BMI and to find out what my blood pressure means. So those are the intent, right? But notice here, the intent is explain. Then you have to have an entity to qualify what exactly you want to explain, right? And see this topic. Topic is an entity because the topic qualifies what I want to explain. And the topic has multiple values. What are the topics? Blood pressure and BMI, right? Each topic is a value of each different topic. See, those are the values of the topic entity. Topic qualifies what I want to be explained, right? And in here, different values are different topics that we can discuss. And this is a synonym. So a synonym is a different way to phrase the same concept. For example, BMI, I can say is body fat percentage. I can say it as body mass index, weight to height ratio. Right? I can say it differently. The same concept. So those are the synonyms. So that's that. Then I have another entity. I have different entity. This one is called valid email. So this is a pattern entity because what I'm doing here is this. Instead of specifying the actual synonyms, I do the pattern. And this, feel free to use it. This is a pattern for valid email format. So whenever email is entered, it's going to match, make sure that it matches this pattern, right? So email must match this pattern. You could have more than one pattern. For example, if you were going to do the phone number, you have local phone number and international phone number, right? So you can have more than one pattern. But this is a pattern entity that you're gonna try to read from user's input, but you have to define like this because the values match specific regular expression, okay? Now, what else you've got? You have I showed you the intents, right? My entities, and what else do we have here? System entities. System entities come with the system. They're pre-built. and you turn on only the ones that you want to use. In my case, what I'm using time, I'm using the date, right? And I'm using the numbers. For the date, what I'm doing, I'm extracting the a day of the week component, right? So basically, I'm using date time because I'm checking what time is it, and based on the time of the day, I display different picture, right, in the welcome message. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm using numbers because when I enter the blood pressure, I try to read the number from the keyboard, right? Now let's go back here. So that's that thing. And well, the reason why you're asked to import the entities, otherwise your walkthrough would be more than 100 pages long if you were asked to create all of that manually. So for the walkthrough, you're given a list of entities and intents and you importing. But probably for your assignment, you'll be entering them manually. All right. So here, this is an expression, pattern entity. This is expression for email. So feel free to steal it. But again, you're not going to submit what I'm giving you. You're going to be doing your work, right? Perhaps it could be something like a reservation and you want to email the copy of reservation to somebody. So you can reuse this expression for email, right? It's a code reuse. But again, like here, I showed you the difference. There are two types of entities, the ones that you create and the ones that are pre-built. The ones that are system entities, they start with SYS and then underscore, yeah? So we use the time to extract the time. We use this date to extract the current day of the week. And I'm using number to read the number from the input, right? So you cannot add system entities manually and you cannot export them. They're not part of JSON file. You cannot edit it, right? But you use them across multiple skills. They're pre-built, you use them across multiple skills. It cannot export, cannot change, cannot rename, anything like that, okay? This is just a review how to add an entity. I'm assuming that you started the walkthrough. You should have by now, because you should be starting your own application. So this is what is this? This is a dialog, right? So if I go back, I go back to the dialog. Initially, you start with a two node. Each dialog must have a welcome node and it must have anything else node. So what's happening here? Welcome node catches when the conversation starts. It's a condition when you just start the conversation, right? It's gonna trigger the welcome node. Then what's gonna happen next when you type your input? It's gonna check. Each node has an entry condition. It's gonna check. Okay, this is not the beginning of the conversation, so it's not welcome. Did the user input make an intent to email? If it's yes, then it's going to go into email me logic. If it's not, if continue, they're going to say, okay, did the input indicate that I'm trying to estimate my BMI? If yes, then I'm going to go into this logic. If not, it's going to continue to the next node. Am I trying to do goodbye? Am I trying to say to exit? Yes, then it's gonna go to goodbye. Otherwise, it's gonna continue. See, it keeps going sequentially. So if it's none of that, none of the above, then it's gonna check if I want to interpret my blood pressure readings. If yes, I go in here. If no, it's gonna check if I want to look. I'm looking for details on the topic. If not, then it's going to go to anything else because it did not recognize my input. So it has to tell me that anything that I entered was not recognized. I need to either rephrase it, something like that, right? So it's going to tell me. That's a way to catch when a chatbot does not recognize. All right? So anything else node has to be lost because it catches when none of the input, when the user's input did not trigger any of the nodes above. All right, it's very important. Now what I have here, welcome node, so application loads. So see here, this is parent. And what do I have in this parent? I'm displaying something. You have to do something like an introduction. I cannot just say, hey, how can I help? This is, well, this worked for the tutorial because the tutorial is just to help you get started. But when you do an actual application that you submit for grade, you want to make sure that the messages the chatbot displays is informative. In other words, just by reading it, I should know what what answers is what my chatbot is looking for, right? Like here, I I introduced myself, right? Like I'm Miss Stethoscope, I'm Mr. VMI, right? Right, like this. See, so now it's checking. See the response. This is the conditional response. It's checking the time. See that now here, this is the syntax to check the time. If it's now before 10 a.m., but actually it's doing, it's checking between 10 a.m. and midnight. That's what it does. Then it takes this picture and this message. If now is after 5, if it's after 5 p.m. and before midnight, see, it goes starting from midnight. Midnight is the cut point. So here, if I say after 5, it means that between 5 and midnight of the next day, right? Otherwise, this here is not in anything else node. Keep that in mind. It just means here it's in a conditional response. If it's not before 10 and if it's not after 5, right, then display this picture. And I can click here to see the details for the response. Again, see this, what is this? The text is different because when I launch my chatbot again, I don't want it to repeat exactly the same greeting. So you want to have at least 3 ways to word the greetings, right? That's what it means, the response variation. It's a different way to phrase my sentence. For example, greeting, I'm Mr. Monitor, how may I help you? Welcome aboard, my name is Mr. Monitor. See, basically I'm paraphrasing it. Same message but paraphrase. Then what is this? This is the image source. You need to get the image URL. And I'm using pictures just from just Google Images. I put this picture, it's a picture of a robot. It could be any picture related to your chatbot, right? You have to have an image. You also need to have a video. You just put a link to a video. That's it. It's similar. All right. So that's an image in this case. All right. Gonna click cancel. I don't want to make any changes, but this is a conditional response. Then this is the child node. So I want always after executing this, I want to come to here. Remember, the first level node, the parent nodes, they cannot have an entry condition is true, because otherwise your control will always go to that piece of the chart. It will always execute that node no matter what, and you don't want that. All right, so this one is just a child node. It's gonna display the menu, but even before we do that, what's happening? What's happening here? So here, yes, this was just gonna jump to main menu, go in here. Here, there are two variables, and new walkthrough shows an example of how to use the JSON editor to do the setting. There is another way you can set a context like this too. So here, what is this? I'm setting today's date, and today's date, this is just the syntax, how to read the date from today's date. So if I do this 5-letter is, it's gonna be complete day name, like Tuesday, full word. If I put 3 letters E, it's gonna be abbreviation, right? And this one, I'm using it just for the email. It's just for attempt to get the user's email. I defined it here. There are multiple ways to do it. What is this? What is this? This is the options response type. What does that mean here? Well, okay. Label is a text that user sees. Remember, we did this. See, those are the options. Those are the labels, what I see. Huh? Label is what I see. And value is an intent that gets triggered. Right? So this is equivalent, like for example, selecting estimate BMI is equivalent to typing BMI in a keyboard. And it's going to trigger the corresponding node in a dialog. Like for example, if I type BMI, right? If I type BMI in the keyboard, it's going to trigger estimate BMI node because it's a node entry condition, see? So here value is an intent that gets fired once when you enter this on a keyboard, perhaps. If you were going to enter, but in this case, you're selecting an option, so that's an intent. And this is how this option appears in the menu, all right? So option response, and this is just the prompt, right? It's a title, it's a prompt, the question. But you don't just put how may I help you. You want to give the user options. You want your chatbot to be user-friendly. Then you're going to minimize the likelihood of unexpected input because you tell the user what input is expected, right? So this is a good way to start. You ask, and based on that, it's going to trigger the corresponding node, right? So this is just an explanation of a concept. This is just explains how I did it. See, it's picking up the time. And then, oops, what is going on? Okay, now I'm gonna check. We're gonna check the blood pressure. It's a little bit. It took a while to configure. I don't expect you're gonna do that as complex, but just okay. Here, the blood pressure readings. What's happening in here? First of all, this is a node entry condition. If I'm asking for the blood pressure, but I'm not asking to explain me what my blood pressure is, I'm asking to check exactly what my blood pressure readings mean, right? Then here, this is called a slot. I'm checking the user input. I'm looking for the number in the user input. First number must be the systolic, the high reading. If I didn't read the first number from the input, I'm gonna ask, please enter your diastolic reading, systolic number, right? Systolic reading. And what I'm doing here, I'm looking for the number in the input and I'm storing this in systolic variable, right? I'm storing it as systolic. And this slot is required, so you cannot, unless you totally exit this part of conversation, you cannot get by without entering it. You must enter this to continue, right? Then in here, what I also do, it just specify what happens if it doesn't recognize what to do. It's gonna ask you again and again, right? But wait a minute, I have a handler. Why do I have a handler? Well, for example, here, I could ask for clarification, right? Like, see, like, for example, I don't understand what it's asking me. I can say, hey, clarify. And then it's gonna show the clarification message. Like, for example, let's take a look. Let's refresh this. Let me show you. Okay, so here I'm going to select, for example, my blood pressure, right? It's gonna ask me enter the systolic blood pressure. And maybe I don't understand what it's talking about, so I'm gonna type this, explain, right? It's just gonna tell me that little message. It tells me blood pressure is a strength at which the blood is pushing in the vessel, right, and moves through your body. Now it's asking for a question again, see? So this is basically the handler allows you to have a little side conversation and then it gets you back to where you were, right? I can enter, perhaps I entered my systolic blood pressure, right? I need to type it. I type and it recognizes the number. Now it's asking me to enter another region and I don't feel like it. So I can type something like exit and it's gonna quit. See? See, this sounds like you want to quit and it's quit. So I should be able to exit. So how is this configured here? I go to manage handlers and here, if it recognizes the goodbye, I specify what I want to do. I temporarily, I set the systolic and diastolic readings to dummy value -1. This is just dummy, right? Because then I want to respond to the user accordingly, right? So this is a dummy value. Later on, oops, I do something called conditional response. So here I'm reading. So I'm looking at the range of numbers that were entered. Like for example, systolic right? What to do if both of them are under 0? So this is a dummy example, dummy value that I set, right? So let's see here. It's just gonna tell you what to do. See, it's gonna go to goodbye node. For each option, for each values that I entered here, it's gonna take a different, it's gonna show different response based on the values of your systolic and diastolic blood pressure. See, and where is it? It stores in the variables, and I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna try it also to show you what's happening. But see here, well, if you look at this, if it's none of this, then if it's none of this, then it's gonna say sorry. Please make sure to specify blood pressure and make sure the specified blood pressure is valid. Right? If it's none of this, if you enter something like invalid, it catches. Here it just catches if it's less than 0. Remember, I set it to dummy values. When I wanted to exit, I set the blood pressure to -1, right? I did it on purpose. And then it's gonna display that message that I showed you, and it's gonna go where? To the goodbye message, right? It's gonna go to goodbye node, right? Make sense? So here, those are called conditional responses, and then you specify where you want to go next. And in this case, I believe I want to show, oh, here, I specify here. So after this response, I want to go to this menu. I want to do, what is this? It's a menu. See this? This is a menu, and it's located, it's here, right? And which parts of the menu? So this is gonna go to the main menu node, and it's gonna go to evaluate response, right? So it just tells you what's gonna do next, right? You specify at the end of which node, you specify where you want to go next. It's a condition. Sometimes a node, it could be awaiting user response, and based on response, you take action, or you could go to specific node for response. See this? Sometimes I want to display perhaps my menu again. Maybe the user wants to do something else, right? So let's go back to the slides here. So this is a blood pressure. You're reading the number. Oh, and this is just the syntax on how to read. See here. Oh, I have not showed you this one. This one is here, explain. This is done as a folder. The folder allows you grouping the similar node, let's say, because if I expand it, it's just a node per topic. You can do it multiple ways, but see, in order to get into this logic, you need to have, what's a condition? The condition is in explain intent. The first node is picked up is the topic is BMI, and another one, next node is picked up is the topic is blood pressure. But remember, blood pressure contains a space, that's why it's in parentheses here, right? So this is just a node to display this information, and it's worded differently. So that's that, right? Then, well, actually, I should show you what's happening here inside. See, this is as I'm working on my chatbot. Let's say maybe it's not working as expected, right? So what you need to do is you need to use a try it out window and take a look at this. I just started. I just launched it, right? Click on the manage context. It's gonna tell you what you have, what variables you currently have defined. Attempt is 0, right? Today is Tuesday, right? And I have not really, it's just picking up. For some reason, it says that I'm Los Angeles. I'm not, but it has to do with the settings on this PC probably. Anyways, so those are the context variables. So now let's run this. I'm gonna select an option, and I'm gonna intentionally select estimate BMI because I want you to see what's happening. So here it's gonna read the BMI, right? So it's asking what is the height in inches. So once perhaps I put 62 inches, what happened? Let's take a look at what happened. If I go to here, manage context, do you see that it created height in here? It created height. See, so it's storing the 62 that I entered in the keyboard. It read the number and it's storing the number in here. See that? Now, it's asking me to enter another number. See, what is this system number? This is a system entity. It read the system entity from user keyboard. So if I put my weight here, click enter, now what's gonna happen? I need to go to manage context and I can check. Did it actually store what I intended? It stored my weight. So that means it's working as I want, right? It's working as I want. So now then you want to see what happens. See, it's giving me the BMI based on this and it says healthy weight. Then I can check. I can go through the logic for my conditional responses and I can check which conditional response was actually triggered. See? So I would have to, in order to debug, you would have to see it like this and you would have to look at manage conflict. What exactly was that set? Did it set as expected or not? And even if you make any small change, you have to retest the whole chatbot sometimes. So to save yourself, periodically go and export the JSON file to make a backup. Then you can go back to what you had working, right? So that's what you will do. And each time after you made the change, you can click on clear. When you made changes to the chatbot, you can click clear, right? That would clear everything that you stored and it will restart from scratch, retesting the chatbot. So see, like if I do something like email me the information, it's gonna ask you for an email. It's gonna read, it's attempting to read from the input something that could indicate the valid email. It must have an ad, right? It must have something after ad. It has to have something like .com or .gov or .edu, something like that. Right, so this is a valid email. Then this is what is this? Valid email. It read that pattern entity called valid email in here, and it stored my email here. Then I outputted it, right? I echoed, I output. So the whole idea is that you need to somewhere, somehow, you need to be able to read the user's input and to output what the input is. Somewhere in your chatbot, you need to illustrate that you know how to read a number. Well, maybe not necessarily a number, but some input from user keyboard, and you can output or do some calculation, something like that. Like for example, perhaps I'm ordering pizza, right? I can specify the size that I want. I can specify the toppings that I want, right? I can specify the type of crust that I want. Well, things like that. So you want to be gathering the information from the user. The chatbot must be prompting user for information. So that's the whole idea, right? It does not necessarily, it may or may not be numbers, but you need to show that you know how to use the system entities. So it could be numbers, could be dates. Perhaps you show what today's day of the week or what today's date is. Something like that, all right? So now I went over a lot of the stuff. Well, you know different response types, right? Image, text. You please also include the video. The video is one of the recently added response types. Then there is also pause. So sometimes you want to display some text, take a little break, and then show more text. That's why would you use it? All right. So use different response type. This is just explanation of what the option does. Remember, you have the column label is what your user sees, and the value is intended gets fired when that value is selected, when that label is selected, right? Oh, well, this is just showing you for the blood pressure. You're reading the numbers from the input, and it's using two slots. The slots are required. And please, every time when you use slots in the works that you submit, please use handlers, because you don't want it to be a broken record chatbot. Keeps asking and asking and asking and asking. What if I want to quit? What if I don't want to enter my weight? Just an example. If I want to quit, I should be able to quit the conversation, right? So just know that, make sure there is a way to exit. All right, this is just shows you how to read the email. You can use the context editor or you can use the JSON editor. All right. So this is just an email. This is a pattern entity for the email. This is how to read an email, actually, in a variable email.literal. And if you cannot get it to work on the first attempt, don't worry. It took me a while to get this to work. This is a little tricky, all right? So feel free to reuse the expression. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. At the same time, please do not submit the examples that you got, because then your instructor will have to submit the Salesforce ticket to add me to the roster, right? Because if this is my work, then I supposed to be graded, right? Then the professor will have to put the Salesforce ticket to add me to the list, to add me to his gradebook. As simple as that, because if I did it, I get the points, right? I get the diploma. No, I don't need the second diploma. I already have one. Anyways, so this is it. And this is how to read the date, right? It's going to be the full spelling. The full spelling of the date. And if it's just 3 letters, it's an abbreviation of the date. 5 letters, it's going to be the full spelling of the date, right? So that, this is just a goodbye. It's checking what the day is, what today's day, and based on the day, I want to show different message to my user, right? But folder is just a way to group multiple nodes. You don't have to have it. But I'm just showing you what can be done. So what is this? This is what I just showed you and tried out, how it's reading the numbers. Estimate the BMI. See, it's reading the number from the user's input. That's what it is. Sys number, what is this? It's an example, it's a system entity, right? So it's reading the system entity number from the user's input. I just put it how it does. I'll give you the slides. I put the notes. All right, now, next step would be to create an assistant. Why you do that? Because somehow you need to give a link to your testers. You're gonna have several testers in 2 days. So what you're gonna do, and I already created an assistant, but it does not matter. I'm gonna create another one to show you. Look, I need to click on create an assistant. Let's gonna call it something like Yelena's Healthcare. Yelena's Healthcare. Right? I created this. Now I'm gonna click create an assistant. What do I need to do next? I need to add the dialogue skill, right? The dialogue skill that I just created. So we're just gonna add this. Add a skill. That's it, we are done, right? That's an assistant. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and delete this one. I'm gonna delete this one. So to delete, I just remove the skill. I go remove, and then I just click and I just delete. Oops, does not copyright. Okay, so this is the one I want to delete, right? Just click and I select delete, and then I tap delete to confirm. Okay, delete. Now, this one is Mr. BMI that I created, the same way that I just showed you, right? So this is what you're gonna do. Well, this is a dialogue skill, right? This is a dialogue skill that I added. Over here at the top, it says preview. You're gonna click on this preview button. Then this is a link that you want to share with your testers. You can just do this. You can do copy. Then if you go to another tab, paste, right? This is the link that you're gonna send to your testers. They are going to run some conversation, and your tester can be anybody, any of your friends, any of your family members. It could be me. You could ask me to test, no problem, right? Anyone. So you're gonna do the testing. Oh, that's funny. Okay, you're gonna get the testing done. What's happening? What's actually happening? If you go back to your skill, so this is my skill. If I go back here, this is called analytics. What it does, it stores the conversation data. So today I was showing you some conversations, and it stored all of this. It got stored in this overview here. It shows that I had 6 conversations, average number of messages, and you're gonna have 2 days worth of conversations, because what you'll do after day 1, you're gonna go and look, are there any weak understandings? Is there anything that the chatbot did not quite understand correctly? that I could fix, right? You're gonna look at, you can click on a view log. See, so there is a weak understanding. You can click on view log. I typed the word cat, right? It did not recognize it. Suppose that cat was an actual intent that I wanted to do, and it did not recognize it. What would you do here? You can open the conversation, and you can check. See, you can change the classification. For example, suppose that cat is the same thing as a blood pressure, right? And it did not recognize, then I can go to intent and I can select the correct intent. See that? So if me as a user entered something and the chatbot did not recognize it as intended, you can go here and you change it. So that's how you train the chatbot, right? You go look at the weak conversation or anything that you will see what actually happened, how the chatbot took the user's conversation. For example, you could be asking about the languages, right? And if I'm testing it, maybe I specified the language that was not part of the list of the recognized languages. That you're gonna see it and you're gonna add it as a value of the language entity, right? So that's the changes that you can make. You're gonna see the synonyms. When I tested, I tried to break it. Well, not break it, but I tried to enter the synonym for something that a chatbot asks, something that it does not recognize, let's say, right? For example, in some countries they don't know what restroom is. They use the toilet, they use washrooms, right? But when I say bathroom, they don't understand what I mean, right? But if you're a chatbot developer, oh, you see, she said bathroom. She said restroom. Maybe she means bathroom. So let's add the synonym to that entity. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes people call it different. Like I've heard washroom, and the first washroom was not one of my synonyms. And the user who tested the chatbot used it. So we can add, right? We can add the classification. So you're going to look at the conversations and you're going to look at you also want to look at those in the overview. It's going to tell you how each intent and how each entity was used. Why is this information important? Because it tells you which portion of the chatbot was used the most, right? Like perhaps what users focused on. Did they use it more for blood pressure or did they use it more for BMI? Then you can develop more aspects of your chatbot accordingly. You look at how it's used and focus on what portion of the chatbot were used. Look at the synonyms and etc. Right? So you will need to explain that in the paper and what changes you made, what happened on the next day, and if you were going to run another day, what else would you change? There is no right or wrong answer. If you did not need to change much, you need to explain why. Well, perhaps I used a lot of menus, so my user knew what to select, something like that. Because when you give options, you reduce the likelihood of invalid responses because the user knows what to expect. I'm not going to be just typing in, I'll probably select one of the options, right? More likely. Probably. Unless I don't see the options that I'm looking at, I might do it this way. So this is just telling you're building an assistant, you're going to send the link to your friend. So you're going to get this dialogue node, and then you're going to do that. You're going to send that link, share that link, and people will test it, whoever. Well, the more testers you have, the better it is because it has to do with different synonyms that people use to call the same concept. So they run several conversations. You make adjustments, take notes on adjustments that you made. You're going to repeat the experiment on the second day, share your findings, and etc. You're going to share it in your paper. All right. This is just showing you an example. This screenshot, well, just get an idea. They change how things appear. They change appearance of the application all the time. But just get the concept. All right. So it's just showing you this is a total number of conversation. In your case, it has to be 2 days, right? 2 days. and you're showing, I had 2 week understanding. Let's take a look at that. And you don't need to discuss each dialogue in detail, but give some examples, perhaps. Maybe take one conversation and use it as an example. Right? To see here, just using the conversation as an example. Something like that. Those are some of the documentation pages that you might find helpful. All right? So now let me have your questions, please. Guys, questions. Do you need help with selecting the topic for a chatbot? Think about what is your hobby, what do you like to do, right? What's your interest? You want to be a little bit familiar. It doesn't have to be medical topic. Reservations, dinner reservation. It could be something like ice cream. You're gonna ask if you want a cup or a cone. You wanna ask how many scoops, perhaps. Then you can ask about the toppings, right? Something like that. And just an ice cream. For pizza, you would probably also ask about the toppings. You're gonna ask the crust type, right? The size. Then if it's a doctor appointment, you probably wanna ask on what day you want to come in, which location you want to come in, right? But if it's something like toppings, you may want to give the user a choice, which toppings are available. Because how are you going to get the more relevant response? Think about it this way. If I don't know what's available, how can I, Yeah, please ask me questions. And you know where to find the applications, right? So this is my email. If you go to the email, you see that there are applications and the Visio should be one of them. So you go to your emails, your student email, and you're gonna see it. In the applications, you have Visio. It's free, totally free. You don't need to get any licenses. And you save in, you have a cloud storage. You can save all your work. You can save it on your, like if you go here, see this OneDrive, you have OneDrive storage. So you can even save all your papers in there, and you don't need to worry about your computer crashing because you're gonna have those papers in there. Not sure if anyone told you that before, but now you know. All right, anything, any questions? Anything that you think that I should have covered here? It's your turn, guys. Questions for me? You think you can do an A work for this assignment? This is the easiest assignment, I think, no? Oh, most welcome, most welcome. So, if there are no questions, you're gonna get this recording, you're gonna get the slides, and you're gonna get the JSON file for the chatbot that I showed you today. Sounds good? All right. If there are no questions, we're gonna call it a night. Okay? Enjoy.